everyone. Today's guest is the wonderful Kristen L. Berry. She is a writer and communications executive, born and raised in Metro Detroit. She graduated from the University of Michigan with a bachelor's degree in English language and literature. She has provided PR and communications expertise to leading consumer brands for nearly 20 years, all while writing in her spare time. When she isn't reading or writing, Kristen can be found lifting heavy at the gym, hiking in Malibu, eating her way through Los Angeles with her partner, or shouting at the latest Formula One race. Her debut novel, We Don't Talk About Carol, can be found in stores everywhere. It's such a fantastic book. Everybody, welcome Kristen.
Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate you having me.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I want to start off the interview the way I start off all of these interviews, which is just finding out about your journey to writing. Particularly in your case, it seems that you came at writing from after already establishing a successful career. So what has your journey to writing been like? Is it a lifelong thing? Is it more recent? I'm just curious to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been lifelong. It's funny, I sometimes get envious of authors who have a very clear and specific origin story of when they first started writing. For me, it would be like trying to remember taking my first step. Like, I truly don't even remember it. I've been a big reader my entire life, and I think for as long as I can remember, as soon as I realized that actual human beings came up with those stories I was reading, I wanted to be one of the people who also created those stories. It just seemed like the closest thing to being a magician in real life. So yeah, I've been writing. So I have been working. I've established my PR career, as you mentioned. I've been working in PR for 20 years, but I've been writing the entire time. From the time I was in elementary school, I remember making little stories and illustrating them and stapling them together and showing them to my parents. So it's always been my dream to eventually become a published author. And I'm so grateful that that dream has finally been realized.
Wow, so you were writing your whole life. You want to tap into this, the magic of it all. So where
Yeah.
I'm curious then, are you as you go into this communications career, PR and all that stuff, are you taking writing classes on the side? Are you just writing quietly in your room, secretly dreaming about the day? Like what's that? What does the behind the scenes look like for that?
Yeah, definitely. There was a lot of quiet behind the scenes writing all through school. And I took one creative writing class while studying English at the University of Michigan. And it was such a wonderful experience that it also definitely encouraged me to continue writing. Just getting feedback from other readers, positive feedback, thankfully, on the short stories that I was writing made me feel encouraged and that I should keep going. And then I did write a practice novel right after I graduated from college. I didn't think it was a practice novel at the time, but I wrote it very much in a vacuum. I didn't want anyone to look at it until it was done and until I considered it to be perfect. Then I joined a writing group thinking that they were just going to praise it, say this is the, next great American novel. And instead, I got a lot of really thoughtfully delivered, but very consistent feedback of some things that I would really need to change in order for it to be an enjoyable reading experience. And so that taught me that, okay, I have some work to do before I'm ready to try my hand at novel writing again. So I wrote a lot of short stories on my own. When I decided to try to take the path to publication a little bit more seriously, I did take a series of courses through the UCLA extension program,
Mm.
which was super helpful in, I think, sharpening my craft before writing We Don't Talk About Carol.
Wow. So you were, yeah. So as you said, it was always there. You're even as
Yeah.
you're getting your communications PR, you're writing a novel, and when that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
pan out, you short stories, and then you eventually find your way to these more intensive classes. But yeah, you're always doing it. So that's a beautiful story. So many
Thank
people
you.
like try to do it right out of the gate and then get frustrated on that end, or they kind of have this like crazy pivot later in life and totally abandoning everything else and do it. But you're doing it just kind of like it's this parallel existence for you as the rest of your life is just moving forward. You're establishing your career, doing your thing. I love that, and I think it's probably the most realistic example of this. Is a lot of people are doing that, right? It's like some people are trying to make a singular career out of writing, but most everybody else is doing it on the side of this other career and this other thing that they have to balance their passion and their energy for. So I think that's a really good example for everybody. And I want to talk about your taking the path of publication more seriously and the success you've had. So I love the How I Found My Agent stories. They're the
Yeah.
best. I can just listen to like them all day long. And I'm sure you spoke about it a lot already, but I'm still curious, and I'm sure the listeners are curious. What was your, how did you find your agent? What was your journey like? Feel free to share any parts of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So after I wrote the whole first draft of We Don't Talk About Carol, and this time I had a writing group that I met through the UCLA Extension program read it as I was writing each chapter to give me super helpful feedback during the writing process. I think that led to a cleaner first draft,
Mm.
also, to be honest. And then I did a lot of revision work on it by myself, and I took a wonderful revision course called Revision Season. It's done by an author, Alana K. Arnold. It was super helpful into sort of thinking about how to take revision more seriously. Revised, had my book club read it as well, revised some more, and then all along this process, I started researching literary agents. I did it, I guess you could almost call it the old-fashioned way, looking at Query Tracker and some other resources like this just to research which agents are open to queries that are interested in representing authors with a similar genre as mine, and doing a lot of research, honestly, on their websites and social media to see any specifics in terms of, the niches that they're really interested in representing. I got really fortunate in my querying process. I will say I think that my query letter was very strong. I also did about, I don't know, at least a dozen drafts of that query letter before I started sending them out. I also had my writing group look at that as well, because it's difficult to summarize a 100,000 word manuscript in a few paragraphs and do it in a way that
Yeah.
feels compelling. I think I reached out to 18 agents in total, which is on the low side. So I did, again, get very fortunate, but I think I was also very specific in who I was reaching out to. And I connected with my agent, Sharon Pelletier, through a rejection. So I actually reached out to another agent at her agency, and she passed on my book, but said, I can't take this on right now, but I think a colleague of mine would be really interested in this. Please reach out to her and say that I strongly recommended you
Wow.
do so. And I did. And then Sharon reached out, I think the next day, asking for the full manuscript. And the rest was history.
Oh, that's an amazing story. I have so many follow-up questions to this.
Yeah.
Um, so let's start with like the end because this is like the most recent thing you said. So when you reached out, because this is really interesting. So you were turned down by an agent, but she recommended a friend, which I have heard of before. Now, where I would get tripped up is when she writes back to you and says, "Now reach out to this other person." I would start going, "What's the protocol? How am I supposed to do this?
Mm.
Is this you send her a brand new query, but you just like specialize it in the opening line, or did you send her like an email that said like, I was told to email you? Like, how did you approach that?"
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly now. I think I did follow whatever Sharon's requirements were, because every agent has different requirements in terms of how you're supposed to reach out. But I
Right.
definitely adjusted the intro sentence to my query letter to say that, Agent XYZ strongly suggested I reach out to you. And I knew that because they were both working at the same agency, that would be very easy for them to talk to each other. So Sharon
Right.
could just, ping her colleague and say, "Hey, I got this, email. Is this true?" Or like,
Right.
"Why did that way that, the other agent could fill Sharon in on the details. And I tried really hard not to let myself get tripped up. The second I saw that email come through, I just wrote the revised query letter for Sharon. I did some research on her, though, first, just to make sure that I thought that she'd be a good fit for me. It
Mm-hmm.
was also really important to me that I worked with an agent that represented a diverse array of authors. And I saw that Sharon did. Sharon represented lots of different authors from lots of different backgrounds. people who I admired. Also, weirdly, we both grew up in the suburbs of Detroit,
Oh, wow.
which was a funny coincidence. And so it also made for a really nice first conversation because we had
Oh,
some things in common already.
that's funny that you're calling that a coincidence. I would have been like, it's fate. See,
It did feel
that's
like
the
fate.
danger. Yeah. That's the danger of all of this, right? When you find this
Yes.
connection, talking about that research you did, right? So you
Yeah.
very thoroughly researched the agents. What happens is if you go on their MSLW or you're reading their
Hmm.
bio and there's something like that where it's like suburbs of Detroit and you're like, I'm the suburbs of Detroit. And
Yeah.
then you get it in your head. You're like, I have to work with this person. This is
Mm.
fate, right? I think there's a lot of that happens sometimes and people forget that it's so subjective.
Yeah.
Just because you found this one connective point, it doesn't really always. I mean, I'm glad in your case it did connect, but it doesn't always, you know. But I want to talk about that specialized um,
Mm.
research you did. So, did you tailor the opening line in each query?
Absolutely.
And if so, what kinds of things were you like putting in there?
Yeah, definitely. So this is where my background in PR was super helpful because it's querying agents is very similar to reaching out to journalists. You're
Hmm,
trying to sell this person who doesn't know you usually on a story. You're trying to get them interested in investing their time, energy, effort in you, in your story
right,
or in your product, in which case this time it's like it's a novel.
right.
And so I try to see, if there are specific things they're looking for that I think were incorporated into my novel, and to just make it super clear to them why I think that it's a good fit, and to make sure that they saw that I did my research. So I could say, hey, I noticed on Twitter that you said you were really looking for, novels that combine family drama with suspense. We don't talk about Carol does that in XYZ reasons. I could really make it super tailored to them, and so that they could also see that I'm a professional that's taking this seriously as well, because I do think that makes a difference. That you're personalizing things a bit that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're saying about um, just doing it is as powerful as what you write in there, as is kind of what you're
Yes.
saying. Like you're
Yeah.
acknowledging that you're taking the time to research, you're taking a professional approach to it, and there
Yes.
is
You're
a
not wasting their
psychological,
time as
yeah,
well.
and so there's a psychological component to it where, you're kind. I don't want to say you're flattering them, but you are kind of saying like, I'm paying attention to you. I know the kind of things you want, and I think I could give it to you. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It is trickier than we're saying it like it's like an easy thing to do. It takes a long
Yeah,
time to like find that thing that you
it
think is authentic
does.
enough, that you think is that really does it. But you can attest to how powerful it is. You got an agent with 18 queries, which is incredible.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, I think it's like if you're eventually, hopefully, going to build a long-term relationship with this person, and this is their first impression of you. So if you misspell their name or ignore some things that are very basic that they asked for on their website when it comes to queries, I think that doesn't necessarily bode well for the future of a relationship. I think looking for an agent is a lot like dating. If you're looking for a long-term relationship, yes, you can get excited about some of the things you seem to have in common on your dating app profiles, but
Mhm.
it's not until you kind of like have a conversation, dig a little deeper, that you can see if you really have a meaningful connection. But you also want those first messages to be intentional. If someone is like, using a name that's not yours when they're addressing you, or referencing details that are not in your profile, you'll probably get offended, or just be like less interested in continuing to talk to that person. And I think it's very
Uh,
similar with querying agents.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think and I think your story is I think your story is hopeful and powerful, like I said, because of your intentionality with it. I wanna shift over to talk about we don't talk about Carol.
Yeah.
So I don't want to speak too much into it because I want to let you talk about it, but I loved it, and uh, learning more about your bio and about like what you have going on the side, I see some similarities even in that metaphor you just made about comparing querying an agent pitching to like journalism, and I saw
Yeah.
flashes of that. And we don't talk about Carol. this idea of journalism. Or it's a
Hmm.
big part of it actually. So I guess I want to learn more about like how you came up with the idea. Um, Obviously, like every author brings in little snippets of things that they're interested in their own lives. But where did the particular idea for this story come from?
Yeah, definitely. So I started writing We Don't Talk About Carol in May of 2020. So I was doing a lot of socially distanced pandemic walks around my neighborhood, listening to true crime podcasts. And that's when I learned about the really disturbing discrepancies when it comes to the way missing people of color, the way their cases are treated in this country. For example, Black Americans are going missing at a disproportionately high rate, yet our cases are less likely to be covered by the press and our cases are less likely to be solved. And I've always found fiction to be a great way of learning about the experiences of others and, building empathy towards the experiences of others. And so I thought if I could find a way of capturing this really troubling issue in a riveting work of fiction, that maybe I could shed some additional light on the matter and maybe open up some hearts along the way.
Oh, I love that. So you start with the issue, and then you built
Yes.
a novel idea around it. Love that.
Yes.
Let's get into the novel idea then. So now you have this issue, and which is a
Yes.
big issue. And how do you do it justice? And how do you find a story that is, because you want to make it fun and entertaining and all that stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you come up with this idea of this missing aunt essentially, who was
Mm-hmm.
missing from this person's life. But you find out right in the beginning. This is not like a plot reveal at the end. This is how the book starts. Is like this. This is this picture of this girl, and it's Carol. And who's Carol, right? So where
Mm-hmm.
did this idea of finding a photograph of a person that you
Mm.
never knew existed, is that just happens in the moment creatively, or was that inspired by something? Because I think that's a really genius premise to build a story around. Like that alone, that like it's almost like a what if scenario. What if you find a picture
Yeah.
of somebody that you never knew existed and you're related to them, right? Um, but it's like a perfect premise that kind of like helps you expand into a novel, like just within itself. So was that just like a spark of inspiration, or did that come from something?
Yeah, it's so funny. I've it's hard to even remember the details of some of this at this point, but at the end of the day, because I did want this to ground this very real issue into an entertaining page turning story, I wanted to find a way to make it feel more personal. So this idea of the epidemic of missing women of color in particular in America. And so I thought, okay, the best way to do that would be to root it in someone's into a character's personal story. So a family member, a loved one being the person to go missing. And very, very different circumstances. While I was growing up, I did have an uncle who was technically missing in the sense that no one in the family knew where he was, what was going on with him. Again, very different circumstances, a lot way less nefarious than what's going on, and We Don't Talk About Carol. But this kind of specter of this missing family member, or this family member who like no one knows where he is, if he's okay, all of that did loom. Somewhat large in my subconscious growing up. And the idea that it was like my mother's brother, that somebody that close to you could lose touch with in that way. I also really I enjoy suspense in family drama as like the primary novels that I reach for when I go to a bookstore, and so I wanted to find a way to tie those together in this story. And I thought this idea of building a family that has a lot of secrets would make a lot of sense to root the story in. So, and We Don't Talk About Carol, my main character Sydney grew up with this motto of what happens in this house stays in this house. And so I thought it would be interesting if, in addition to trying to find out what happened to her Aunt Carol and these other missing girls, would also be to understand why her family kept Carol a secret and what led to that and what are the ramifications of those kinds of secrets within a family, and just kind of like tie that all together into one story. So
Oh, I
that's
love it.
from the very beginning, that's sort of what I was setting out to do.
Yeah, that's perfect. And uh, all that shines through very clearly. The the tropes of like the family secrets and like
Mm,
this like this dysfunctional family dynamics, like all of that stuff. It hits very strong. I find it so interesting that the seed of the idea is connected to a real personal experience you have of this um, missing family member. But I
hmm.
think that's so telling that so many writers are ideas. People ask writers like, "Where do your ideas come from?" You've seen these interviews, and the writers are like stumped, like, "I don't know. Where does an idea ever come from?"
Yeah,
But a lot of times, it comes from taking something, as you said, that's not nefarious, something
right.
that's just like mildly. It's just enough of something, and you twist it or you push it as far as it goes and go, well, what if it was that instead? And bam, you have a
Exactly.
story now. So it's really cool that
Exactly.
there is a genesis like that to this story. And can I take a minute to say how genius the book title is?
Thank
It's
you.
so genius. I spoke to a couple people about the book, and the
Yeah.
very first thing they say when I say we don't talk about Carol is, who's Carol?
Ugh, I
That's
love it.
unbelievable. Talk about PR and marketing. Like if you mention a book title and the first question someone asks is who's Carol, you already have them. They didn't even open the book yet, and they're invested, right? That's
I'm so
really
glad.
so cool, so cool. So was the book called that all along, or is that something that you and your publishers like?
So funny. Yes, it has been called that all along. So that sentence appears in the prologue, which was the very first thing I wrote. So the book, as it stands today, the published final version has not changed that much structurally from the draft that my agent initially saw. So the prologue, Sydney's grandmother is the one who initially says, we don't talk about Carol. And as soon as I wrote that, I was like, ooh, that's very intriguing. I feel like at least it should be my working title. And I was so excited when my editor said, oh yeah, no, that's the title for the finished book as well.
So cool. They didn't even make you jump through the hoops of like saying we have five and we'll vote on it. They just said we're going
None.
with it.
I couldn't believe it. They also
That's
took my cover idea, which I was like, what? This is unheard of.
Oh, I well, so first of all, I just want to say about the title, the way it lands at the end of the prologue
Mm,
is so powerful. It's there's so much tension in her saying that and just shutting it down, and you start the story with that, with like this brink of tension, and you go, now let's begin. Right? That genius.
yeah. Thank
I love
you.
that.
That's
Yeah, I
I
love it.
definitely wanted to have that tension at the end, and also I thought it was very telling about the dynamics of the family. That like, oh, they will not discuss difficult things. They will shut it down. They will try to sweep it under the rug, or as happened in the prologue, take the photo that Sydney found and place it face down on top of the refrigerator, to languish there forever. I thought that it was also, very telling about the family dynamic as well. So I thought it served two really important roles.
Oh yeah, hit so hard. What a cool opening. And now that you mention it, let's talk about the cover. So the cover image
Mm.
is it the hydrangeas on the cover?
Yeah,
I don't have the book.
exactly.
I don't have the book with me right now. Oh yeah, there we go.
I do, of
So
course.
because they're hydrangeas, correct?
They are,
Because
yes.
hydrangeas play an important role in the story. As you get through, you discover what role they play. So when
Yes.
you say they accepted your cover idea, because there's this idea that when you're traditionally published,
Mm,
Big Five Publishing, that you don't
hmm.
really get much of a say in any of this stuff. You don't get
Mm.
your book named the thing you want it to be named a lot of the times,
A lot of
and
the time.
a lot of the cases there's not like what would you Kristen, what do you think the cover should be? A lot of times there's not that. So what was your journey like here? Sounds like amazing.
Yeah, it was. I was not sure because I had heard all those stories about people, not getting the cover they wanted or not feeling heard in that process. But when we got towards the end of editing the book, my editor asked me if I had any thoughts regarding the cover, and she asked some really helpful questions too. She asked, I could provide examples of covers I really like. I could provide examples of covers I absolutely hate. I can give any initial ideas that I have, or, think about any really strong visual images from the book. And so, coming from the corporate world, I put a PowerPoint together. And I started it by saying, you all are absolutely the experts when it comes to this. I know that you have so much data on which covers perform well, which colors of covers perform well, and why. So please take all of my input with a grain of salt. But I did give a lot of idea or examples of covers that I loved, things that I don't particularly like. But then I had one slide where I said, take this or leave it. But I really do love this idea of a moody close-up of blue hydrangeas, because they do feature fairly prominently in the book. What do you think? And then when they came back to me with ideas, like mock-ups, all the mock-ups featured close-ups of blue hydrangeas. So they were like sold, and I think my editor and agent both commented on the email or responded to the email saying like, yes, this is the concept. That's spot on. We're going to run with it. And that was incredible because I was not expecting that.
I love it. I love it. And I also love the idea of sending covers that you like and don't like, because
Yeah.
and I suppose you could even say like, I like the way the font. I like the font of this one, or the way the title is laid out.
Yes,
So
exactly.
like say specifically what you liked and didn't like about the covers. Is that kind of what you were doing?
You could. I mean, I mostly told them all the things that I did like. I gave them like a few, written examples of things that I don't love, which I won't say here in case other people's covers include those elements.
Sure.
But I do think, visual, graphic design is so subjective. And so I do think that it's also helpful to, be as specific as you can in terms of what you like and don't like, and providing as many visuals as well. And then so a lot of the back and forth eventually became just finding the right hydrangea image, making sure they were the right color, making sure that, and they took all of my feedback related to like the font and the font color, because that's where a lot of it came in. And it felt very collaborative, and I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Oh, yeah, that's such an amazing story, and a hopeful one, because a lot of times when people, I truly believe like all of the forms of publishing are created equal. So whether you
Yeah.
do the traditional big five or small press or independent, they're all wonderful.
Mhm.
But a lot of people say with traditional publishing, you give up a lot of that creative control. It sounds like you had the best of both worlds. You have the big five publishing, but they actually involved you in the creative control to a pretty large
Yeah.
extent, which is like such a win, such a victory. That's amazing.
Truly, I feel very fortunate.
Ah. All right, let's talk about the specific challenges of writing We Don't Talk About Carol. So I think you've kind of talked a little bit about what went so well with it, and we could talk about that as well. And I know everybody I've spoken to that's written books says every book is like challenging in its own way. So I guess you wrote that first book that was like your learning book, and then you wrote We Don't Talk About Carol, and you did it in a way where it seems like your method, your procedure was much more conducive to you coming out with a nice draft of a book at least. What was the most difficult part of putting this book together?
Yeah, I think for me, it was the revision part. Like, I didn't even know how to approach it. I felt like I'd read so many books about the craft of writing, but I hadn't read too many on the craft of revision yet. Matt Bell's Refuse to Be Done is like my revision Bible. But then also taking that course with Alana K. Arnold was really wonderful. And honestly, I learned about that class because I was open on Instagram. I was very open on Instagram about the fact that I was pursuing this dream. And I said that I was struggling to figure out how to go about the process of revising. Like, how do you even start? What do you do? Where are the checklists for this? And another writer who was in I met her through like a podcast Discord years ago. We were friends on Instagram, and she said, "Hey, I was in this situation too. I took this wonderful course. And I took it and it changed the game for me. So I think like having some sort of structure and support when it came to how to tackle the revision, what to think about was super helpful. And then I'm an overwriter. Uh, I think the first draft of this novel was 138,000 words. It was way too long. And Matt Bell's book has so much wonderful advice on how to cut things back without losing, the meat of the book. Courtney Mom also offers some really great advice about that too. And so it was really just allowing myself to be curious and open to finding, guidance from trusted experts to help that process, to just make sure that it was as polished as it could possibly be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Revision is it's almost like a completely different skill than writing than
Yes.
drafting the novel. So you draft this novel and that just takes so much energy and creativity and all of that. And then you have this thing that you now have to revise, and it's a different thing. It's a whole different thing. So I
Yes.
love that you have all these different sources though of inspiration and or like techniques or advice. And also, I think you hinted at something that's important here, which is that you have to go into revision with like with a very personal approach. So you knew that you had overwritten the novel
Yeah.
by and you had to trim back thousands of words. Some people get it right in and they get it at 80,000 or 75,000, and they go back and have to add stuff in to kind of like bulk up some of the
Hmm.
language or some of the description or whatever. So so there is no one way to do it. It's what kind of writer are you? What kind of book did you write? And then how do you go
Yes.
about doing it? But yeah,
Exactly.
all of the people you mentioned are excellent, and for all of the listeners out there, just tremendous sources. So thank you for sharing those, Kristen. That's super helpful. And I might go back to what you did well with this book as far as the changes, but we already covered that lightly, and there's a few more questions I want to ask you. So maybe we'll come back
Please.
to that at the end. I want to talk. I want to get into more of the kind of stuff that's difficult to talk about, which is
Yeah.
connected to a post that you wrote on Substack. The post was called "So How Are Your Book Sales?" And
Yes.
yeah, and this post, oh, it was such a refreshing post, Kristen. It was
Oh, I'm
such a
so glad
refreshing
you think
post because
so.
so many people are talking about book sales in either a desperate way or
Mm-hmm.
in yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of the only way to describe it. It's either like desperation on the surface or kind of this
Mm-hmm.
hidden desperation. And you
Yeah.
wrote about it in a very you took a very different approach to talking about book sales. Um and tackling this idea of success equals how many books you sold and how much money you made off the
Mm-hmm.
book or whatever. Could you tell us about that, like where that came from, or just for the listeners out there that didn't read it, tell us your views on this. I think it's really helpful for writers out there.
Yeah, I'm so glad that post resonated with you, Jason. Yeah, it's funny. My novel covers a lot of really sensitive topics. There's again this epidemic of missing people of color. There's fertility issues. There's mental health challenges. There's so much. There's so many difficult topics in the book. And for some reason, questions around all those topics are fine for me to handle. The question that is the most triggering for me is the how are your book sales question, which I get a lot. I get that a lot from like coworkers and, well-meaning friends. I understand where the curiosity is coming from, but it can feel very personal, when you've put your whole heart and soul into something. And unfortunately, we have very little control as authors as to how our books actually do from a sales perspective. We can post all we want on social media without any of those posts ever going viral. Like you can pay for external PR support a lot, but a lot of these things are kind of a gamble. The books that like take off and get the celebrity book clubs or, the big subscription box picks and things like that, like there's so few books that get that extra attention every year. And the other piece is it's so difficult to actually even answer the question of how are your book sales? Because, for example, like I do have a portal, an author's portal for Penguin Random House, where I can technically see how many books have sold. Yet It's an incomplete number. It doesn't include, all the different data points, and there are also no benchmarks shared. So I don't really know what those numbers mean as far as like, does this fit my publisher's expectations? How does this compare to my advance? All of that. And so what I've just learned that I need to um, maintain in myself is that, the sales and the ratings, they're not a full measure of the quality of the book, and to kind of separate myself from that as much as possible, and to focus my time and energy as much as I can on the things that I can control. So I was fortunate enough to sign a 2-book deal with Bantam, an imprint of Penguin Random House, and I have very strict deadlines for that second book. And the thing that I have the most control over as an author is the quality of that second book. So I'd rather, yes, I try my best to promote the book on social media and do creative things to get the word out, but I try not to put more energy in that than I am in actually writing, which is the one thing that I have the most control over. So, yeah.
Oh, so many things are, yeah, it really did resonate with me. And even as you're talking, so many things that came to my mind. Number one is when we're writing a book to get picked up by an agent to get the traditional publishing deal,
Yeah.
we're believing in the book. We think this book is great, and we're sending it out to agents. And sometimes you get the agent, sometimes the book doesn't, and you have to write
Yeah.
another one and try a different book because maybe the book wasn't up to snuff, but maybe it was and it just wasn't the right time or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. There's a million things that could go into it. And so, but we can't lose heart. We can't lose faith in that. We can't get bogged down by that because then you won't write the next book. And here you
Yeah.
are, you've made it, you found an agent, you're seriously published, and you think, Kristen's problems are gone. Kristen's made
Yeah.
it. She's good. But now you have that same thing, except now
Yeah.
it's not getting an agent, it's book sales. And you could let that destroy
Yes.
you. You could be like, oh, compare yourself to this person and that person and get bogged down and spend this whole year and all of your energy promoting and posting and as you hinted at, writing a terrible book on the side, writing a terrible
Yeah.
second book on the side, right? So,
Yes.
and how many, I just wonder how many people does that happen? Like that probably happens all the time because it is so
Yeah.
distracting and it is so like mentally frustrating. And you know, how can you write this next great book and put your heart into it if you're so bothered by the success of the book that's out and wondering, maybe I don't, you start to doubt things. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I think what I'm trying to say is I think your approach to it is the healthy approach. And I wish more people talked about that. Like, you're not saying don't try to promote your book. You're saying
Yeah.
promote your book, but then let whatever happens happen and move
Keep it in
on. Don't,
perspective.
yes.
Exactly. Give it like I'm big on time blocking. I talk about this on my Substack as well. So it's good to even think about like, okay, well, how much time in your week are you going to put toward writing versus social media versus writing your Substack articles? I think it's really good to take a holistic look at how you're spending your time and make sure that it's as much as you can control it, that time is being spent towards what you care about most. That
Oh,
you're budgeting it as well as you can.
I love it. Such great advice. And if you guys didn't read her post, So How Are Your Book Sales, you should read it. It's really good. Let's talk about the things you can control, which was your
Yeah.
book launch. I'm so
Yeah.
curious. I love to hear about people's book launches. What how did tell us about your book launch? Like I guess I'm curious to know, like, is there something that worked really well, something that didn't work so well? Just tips about like how to go about doing it because you're so fresh off the book launch and it's that in and of itself could be very daunting to try to, you're basically like throwing a wedding with your
Yeah.
book kind of, right? It's like it could get like, it can get the best of you if you don't, right? So what was yours like? What, any tips for how to organize a successful book launch or yeah, anything?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my publishers asked me if I had any bookstores in mind, like there are any local stores that I would be excited to have my event at. I gave them a short list. I was really, really fortunate that my dream bookstore, the Village Well, which is literally in walking distance of my apartment, it's my neighborhood bookstore.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
And also they reached out to me on Instagram early on before the book was, even close to being out, saying that they would be happy to host my event, when it was time, which was so lovely. It pays to build relationships with your local booksellers. I will definitely say that.
Absolutely.
Um, and then I was very fortunate to have Lauren Ling Brown, the author of Society of Lies, be my conversation partner. And that also came, I mean, Instagram has been helpful to me in so many ways. I follow Lauren. At some point when you have, your publisher's marketplace deal on your Instagram bio, then authors start following you back on Instagram, which is such a heady experience.
Wow,
But
that's
this
cool.
happened where like Lauren followed me back. I saw that she was doing an event with another author. I attended the event. Lauren very graciously offered to, if I wanted to go out for coffee and just talk about the publishing process, she'd be happy to do that. We did that. And then I very nervously asked her, felt like I was asking someone to be my prom date, asked her if she'd be willing to be my conversation partner. And she said yes. So this is sort of a long-winded way of saying, like, starting to build relationships with booksellers, with other authors, especially people who are local to you early on in the process is helpful so that when it comes time to do your event, you already have laid the groundwork in some way. And then I also offered to build Lauren a list of potential questions for the Q&A because it felt like a lot to ask. I'm asking her, she's very busy. I'm asking her to read my entire book and then ask me all these questions and show up at this event. So I thought that it'd be really helpful to at least offer her something to start from a Q&A perspective. And then the nice thing about that was then I was also giving her a lot of questions that I liked, that I felt comfortable answering, which was also really beneficial. And she suggested we did a Zoom practice round before the event. Highly recommend that too, because then you get all your nervousness out. You see kind of which questions don't quite work. You get to practice your talking points. And then I practiced those talking points to death so that I did not feel nervous or as nervous on the day of.
Wow, there's so many great tips in that story, but I think you nailed it as far as the most important takeaway there is you really like reached out and built a network and got yourself involved in community. I mean, the fact that so yeah, you befriended Lauren on Instagram, which is a big win in and of itself. But then when she comes into town, you attend her book event, and then
Yeah.
suddenly you're going out to coffee with her. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about a success story. I mean, and then she's hosting your thing, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. Like just reaching out and being present in the literary community. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that totally changed how that went for you. And I think the preparation with the questions and the Zoom beforehand. Yeah, that's what all great, all wonderful tips. Um, but yeah, I think the powerful takeaway there is getting out there and putting yourself out there and attending these things, which is hard to do, especially for writers who often we often categorize ourselves as we're very quiet,
Yeah.
we don't like to socialize that much, or at least we think
Mm-hmm.
we don't until we're like put in
Mm-hmm.
that situation. Then we're fine, but we're more just internal. And
Yeah.
but you got to get past that prior to your book coming out and really get out there so that there's a welcoming, like so that the community welcomes you almost, right?
Yeah, it definitely helps. And I think that you'll be surprised to find how warm and supportive the community is. Like all the authors that I've connected with and have met have been so lovely because they also remembered, like, for most of them, it wasn't that long ago that they were in our shoes. And so I think that, there's a lot of desire to help others on their journey as well. So it can be really scary at first, but once you get out there, I think you'll find it to be a really wonderful and welcoming group of people.
Awesome, awesome. Before we go, I have a fast round where I ask a bunch of questions very quickly.
Fun.
They're super easy. I think well, they're meant to be super easy. If you get hung up on one, we can always skip it, or you can just no pressure. The first is, are you a plotter or a pantser?
Oh, I was a pantser for Carol. I'm trying to be a plotter now.
Oh, yeah. So your answer is it evolves.
Yeah, it depends on the story. It depends on the
Yeah,
book.
I love that answer. Great answer. Okay, next question. What's one writing rule you don't really agree with? Something you've heard about writing that you don't really agree with.
I don't write every day.
Hmm.
A lot of people say you have to do it, and I'm like, I'm sorry, that's unrealistic.
Right. I'm with you on that. Next one, this could be taken any way. This could be personal, this could be professional, whatever. Who inspires you?
Oh God, it's gonna sound cliche, but Toni Morrison. She's always been my inspiration.
Yeah. Like, so were you reading Toni Morrison in college when you were like dreaming of being a published author?
Yeah, I read Song of Solomon in high school, and I was like, wow, it's possible to write like this. Like, if there's any way I could get even near anywhere in the vicinity of that talent, like I will have made it.
That's amazing. Amazing answer. Okay, if you could, you've given a lot of great advice so far today, but this is like that final piece. If you could offer one piece of advice to aspiring authors, aspiring writers, what would it be?
Feedback is a gift. Get it early, get it often, like find trusted sources, but good feedback is your best friend.
Oh, I love it. And for you, it made all the difference in the world.
All the difference. I learned the hard way.
And then the final question, it might be my favorite, and this could be really taken anyway. Name a book that changed your life. You might have already answered this question, but
I know, I'm trying to think if there's another.
Well, some people go to like childhood books, and some people go books I read last week. It doesn't matter.
It's funny. I often talk about like my two biggest sources of fiction inspiration, Toni Morrison, but also Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl. Like that changed the game for me as far as reading suspense goes. And it taught me, I still think about it whenever I'm trying to write a good twist. There's no twist like the twist in Gone Girl. The first time you read it, it's so impactful, but it feels earned, which is a hard thing to pull off. So that's my North Star as far as suspense goes. And it really got me hooked on the genre.
Yeah, got hooked on the genre, but also it's something you hold up a lot frequently and say, where's my twist on the Gone Girl scale?
Yes, I think about it all the time. Yeah.
That's amazing. Kristen, this was so lovely. Before we go, I want to give you a chance to talk about whatever you want to talk about. If there's something you want to plug, we talked about your book. If you want to talk about, I don't know, your website, anything else, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. As Jason mentioned at the beginning, We Don't Talk About Carol is now available like anywhere you buy your books. Also the library. You know, I'm a big supporter of the public library system, and that really supports authors as well. And then I can be found on Instagram, to a lesser extent, TikTok and Substack, all at Kristen L. Berry. It's the best way to find me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kristen. It was amazing. I can't wait to read whatever comes next.
Yay. Thanks so much for having me, Jason.
You got it. Thanks for watching The Right Thing. If you're interested in learning more about what we talked about in today's podcast, you can head over to Substack to check out my newsletter at jasonearhart.substack.com for an even deeper look into the writer's journey. Also, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you can check out all the things we'll be talking about in the coming weeks. We'll be back next time with another interview, offering more insights to take your craft to the next level. Until then, just keep writing.